give me one shot here on a blue chip stock, believe me, Kevin, the only problem you're gonna have is that you didn't buy more.
Nobody knows if the stock is gonna go up, down, sideways, or in circles.
What is good, NBA draft fans? Your boys are back. The Wolves of Ball Street. Your favorite draft analyst, the Draftdaq NBA Draft Podcast. My name is Corey Tulba, and I am here, as always, with my co-host, Albert. Garbage Time Gim. Albert, what it do?
What's going on, guys? It's I'm excited for this one. This one really got me going when I was watching this tape, and I'm ready. I'm really ready to talk about some Dyson Daniels today. I think he's a guy that Draft Twitter seems to really like too. So, yeah, man, I'm ready to break him down and to hear what you have to say about. Because Corey, I don't think we've ever talked about Dyson, like even like off, like when we weren't recording and stuff like that. So I'm ready to go, man. I'm ready.
We have not had like an individual conversation about Mr. Daniels, so this is a fun one, and it's one that I think a lot of people are going to be interested in because it's not just like draft Twitter that's into Dyson Daniels. Like, he's shooting up, most of the boards too. So Dyson Daniels is an Australian guard who played in the G League this year. 19 years old, young 19 on draft night. He just turned 19. He's listed at 6'6", 200, but he is reportedly, according to Mike Schmitz, who spent time with him a few months ago, and according to Dyson himself, has measured in now at 6'8" with a 6'11" wingspan. So if that's legit, that's a big time thing. I saw him in person, which, I guess we'll talk about in a little bit. I don't know if he looked 6'8" to me in January when I saw him, but I didn't have a measuring tape, so I'll trust his word that that's what he measured in at. This year for the G League Ignite, he averaged 11.8 points per game, 6.9 rebounds per game, 4.7 assists to 2.5 turnovers, 2 steals, and 0.7 blocks. Shot 46.5% from the field, 30.4% from the three-point line, 60% from the free throw line, true shooting percentage of 57%. Now, if you're just looking on like Tankathon or one of those sites, those numbers are going to differ a little bit, and that's because they don't have the full slate of G League games. We have the full G League slate of games thanks to our friends at Instat. So those were his numbers over his 25-plus game season. Getting into Dyson's stock price, he actually was a preseason draft guy. So ESPN had him at 16, SB Nation had him at 22, Bleacher Report had him at 16, Basketball News at 21, Tankathon at 16. That was an average price of 18.2. He came in at 17th on the Draftdaq IPO. Currently, ESPN has him at 10, The Athletic has him at 10, Tankathon has him at 12. Basketball News has him at 13. Bleacher Report at 10. Sports Illustrated at 8. The Ringer at 12. No Ceilings at 11. Average price of 10.8. I will be releasing the updated draft rankings next week, or maybe it already came out, depending on when you're listening to this. So that's on ceilingsnba.com. So at 10.8, Albert, I ask you, is Dyson Daniels stock price too high, too low, or is it just right?
I'm gonna say just right. I have Dyson as like a top 10, right around top 10 guy. I think we're gonna go through his, his good and his bad, but I just think he's right in that area, and I think he's definitely worth a top 10-ish pick, anywhere from 10 to 12, no problem. 8 to 10, yeah, maybe. I could see it. So I have no problem with 10. So I'm going to say just right.
Yeah, I agree. It's just right. I have him as pretty sure I have him as top 10 guy on my board. On my board in front of me, but he's right in that area. So I think this is spot on. And I think, as we'll talk about, like, guys like him, 6'8", can do a little bit of everything. You look at the numbers: 12 points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists. Like, at his size, defends, like that's a guy that teams are going to be interested in the lottery. And he's a guy that it wouldn't shock me if he went higher than 10 or 11 in that range, like a team. And I don't even think it would be a reach, but I could definitely see a team after 5 selecting him, because I think, he's the kind of guy that fits in this modern NBA. So his stock price feels right to me. Now this next part, $10 to invest in these 3 prospects, this little game that we play. This one, I had a hard time coming up with it because there's not a lot of guys in this draft that kind of fit his same profile, but he is, one of these top 10 to 14 guys. So I figured, why not surround him by some other intriguing guys for this segment? So Albert, if you had $10 to invest in Dyson Daniels, I'm going to throw you off here. Malachi Branham and Ousmane Dieng. How would you spend your $10? Because I know you love Branham.
This is actually really freaking hard. Yeah, because Branham's a guy that I've liked for a while. I just don't talk about it a lot. Like, I know recently people have been jumping on that train, and I don't like taking victory laps and stuff like that. He's a guy that really stuck out to me for some time now. This is really hard, dude.
Yeah,
Okay.
I knew this one would throw you off a little.
So you know what? Dieng is a guy that I have not watched as much as everybody else. So I'm gonna give him $2.
Okay.
Is how I feel right now, because I'm a little hesitant because I haven't watched as much as everybody else as our side has, I think, in my opinion. I think you guys really dove deep in him, so I'm not there yet. I've watched a lot of the early season stuff, and I was like, oh, this is not that great. But everything that I've heard you guys say, it seems like later on in the season he really picks it up. So I'm gonna have to wait a little bit on that. So Dieng, I'm gonna give $2. God damn.
You have 8 left.
No. Yeah, no, let me be real with myself. I'm gonna give Branham 5 and Dyson Daniels 3, because I really like Branham a lot. But I do like Daniels a lot. So I really weighed 4 and 4, but I want to be true to myself and give Branham a little bit more. So I'll go 5 and 3.
I like it. Man, this was a hard one for me too, because I really like Ousmane Dieng.
Yeah.
I think he's one of the best passers in the draft, which is not something that, I think you would in a normal draft probably say with like better guard play. It's probably not something you'd say, but in this one specifically, and at 6'10", there's a lot to like. The kid has so much talent, but I'm going to give him 3. I'm going to give Dyson 3, and then I'm going to give Branham 4.
I love it. Love it. Yeah.
And I think that Dyson, there's a chance. I think each guy has a path to be the most valuable guy out of all the guys I listed. Like, I think Dyson, could definitely be a guy that you look at as just one of these connectors who just provides so much value that doesn't show up in the stat sheets at his size with his defensive versatility that he's ends up being the obvious choice between the 3. Dieng, if he hits, I think it's one of those things where it won't even we look back and go, oh my God, how did he slip that far? This was so obvious. And it's in the moment, it's not as obvious, but he's just so talented. And then Branham, his shot making is just insane from everywhere. And he could play on or off the ball, so you could fit him in any kind of context. Yeah. I know his rim numbers are good. His numbers everywhere are good, but and we'll cover him soon, but I don't think he puts as much rim pressure on a defense as I'd like. I'd like him to get to the rim a little bit more. Yeah. But the shot making is so smooth and from everywhere. And I just think that's a playoff guy, no doubt. Dyson too, but a little bit more for me for Branham right now.
Yeah.
I'm riding the train. All right. Let's talk about Dyson's game though, because that's who we're here to talk about. Let's talk about the shooting.
Okay.
How'd you feel about the shooting? Because the numbers, 3%, 30% from 3.
Right.
60% from the line. We have to remember that the free throw shooting in the G League is weird. It's only one free throw. So I don't even know how they calculate the percentages. Is it just straight up off attempts? Is it like some weird weighted system? I don't know. I haven't looked into it. Probably should. We cover the draft. It seems important.
We're professionals here at the
That's on
Draftdaq.
us. But talk to me about his shooting.
Okay, so his shooting, even now, like right now, like even like watching his tape all the way through, it's a work in progress. Is how I think we have to characterize his shooting. I don't think anybody can watch Dyson Daniels and be like, "This guy is a sniper." That should not be coming out of your mouth if you actually watch Dyson Daniels. He's a work in progress. I think, Corey, this is something that you've definitely talked about a lot before. But as I was watching him, I know it's something that you've mentioned a lot when it comes to like guys offensively. You can see them processing things like stuff that they've worked on in an empty gym. You can see them kind of like checking off things like off a list or whatever. I felt like Dyson Daniels, as he's shooting, he's like checking off boxes on a list. It's very like there are there are like steps to his shot, and it feels like in his brain he's like talking to himself as he's shooting. But I feel like over the course of the season that got better and better, where he was becoming more natural. He was thinking a little bit less. But the early season stuff, it felt very mechanical. His shooting, like he was really trying to work on the stuff that like the coaches were telling him in practice. He's like really trying to square up to the basket. He's trying to keep that elbow tucked in. Like it felt like he was really in his head. But later on in the season, like I like some of the shots that he took off the dribble. I like some of the handoff stuff that he was doing. He even took like a step back three. Again, I forgot what team it was that looked really smooth and really good. But overall, I feel like the jump shot is clearly a work in progress, but there are things to like. I really love the wrist snap on him. Like he really snaps the shit out of his wrist after a shot. Like that follow through looks really nice on him. But overall, just I think there's stuff to clean up. I still think it's not as smooth and natural as it needs to be, but I think he'll get there because if you watch his season from beginning of the season to the end, you can see the progression and the progress that he made, the growth that was there with the shot and how it progressively became more natural. So that should make you pretty excited about the trajectory of his shooting. But right now, as of now, it's still a work in progress.
Yeah, I abbreviated work in progress in my notes. So, but I have work in progress. But the form's good, and
yes,
over his final 10 games, he shot 41% from three. It was on 3.4 attempts a game, so it's not like
good
he's
enough.
10 attempts where it's like crazy volume, but it's enough that it's like all right, like back in the day, that would have been you're in the 90s, you're putting up 3-pointers a game, you're in the 3-point contest, so. It's there. I'm an eye test guy with the shot. I'm an eye test guy.
Same.
And to me, it looks good. Now, I just edited his film session with Schmitz, and it's not out yet. But one of the things he said that he was working on, because he thinks the form is good too. But one of the things he said he's working on is the speed of his release.
Nice.
And that's what goes back to you saying like it felt a little mechanical, right? He's going through the motions, like he's spelling out beef in his head, right? Like,
right.
like almost. So he's working on the speed of the release because the NBA, like those dudes close out quick and they're long and they're athletic, and there's another whole speed that he's gonna have to adjust to versus the G League, which is already a faster game than what a bunch of the college kids had to work up to. I think with his shot, the thing that he's going to have to prove is that when teams go under, that he can knock those shots down. Because I think his catch and shoot shot, I think he's got a chance to be pretty efficient with that even early on. Because again, I think it looks good. And if he goes to a situation where he's sharing ball handling duties and he's playing off ball a little bit, I think that the catch and shoot, I'm not worried about. But teams are going to be like, prove it. Because I don't think he's like, we covered Blake Wesley last week, and Dyson doesn't have that same space creation ability like with his handle. He's got a good handle. He's strong. He's got some moves, but he doesn't have that like quick, bursty, like blow by, shifty, herky jerk handle. And he's going to use, I think, a lot of screens to kind of get into the paint, get his paint touches. And I think he's a good passer out of the pick and roll, which we'll talk about. So, like, of course, that makes sense. But teams are going to make him prove it. They're going to go under and meet him at the spot so he can't penetrate. And he's going to have to adjust and knock that shot down, I think.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And it's crazy that you mentioned how he said he needs to speed it up, because that's something I also had in my notes that I just didn't write down. Like the process from him bending his legs to releasing the ball, you can visibly see it in the tape how long it takes him to shoot. Like it's a very weird experience, but as you mentioned, like it still visually looks good. Like
Yeah.
the bones of it are good. So yeah, it's crazy. If he speeds it up for sure, I think it can get a lot better. But overall, just the confidence grew as the season went on. So Corey, like you said, I think he's gonna have I think he had a good experience in the G League where he's gonna be ready and confident to show NBA teams like, oh, I can hit a shot. You're gonna
Yeah.
have to respect this, and then the rest of his game is gonna blossom after that.
What do you think about his creation ability?
So, excuse me. I definitely agree with you, man. The handle is good, right? I thought the handle was solid.
I thought he
He
made
in
big strides
general,
throughout the year with his handle.
yes, yes. I think in general he's kind of an upright guy on both ends of the floor, whether with the
Mm-hmm.
ball in his hands or defensively. He's a very It's so funny. Alex mentioned a giraffe the last episode. He's kind of giraffe-y. Like he looks like he's a
Well,
really long neck and
he's
like a
got the
long
draft
torso.
neck. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So he's got the long neck and stuff. So he's very upright. But as you mentioned, he's definitely going to be living off of a lot of screens. I didn't think the first step was very fast. The handle, he's not a shake and bake, freaking destroy guys one-on-one off the dribble type of guy, nor does he have the jump shot to be really threatening yet right now. I think he's going to run a lot of screen and roll. And actually, at the start of this pod, you called him a connector. And that's kind of how I view him. I kind of see him more as a connector, but if he keeps working on the handle and he keeps developing the jump shot and his confidence keeps going up, then there is a world where he could be a secondary creator for sure. Or even actually, I don't know, man. Even like actually primary might be steep. I'm not sure, but creation wise, I don't see it yet. But I don't want to say that it's impossible for him either.
The bar is very high to be like a primary creator
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
NBA. So I don't necessarily see that from him, because I don't think he's going to have enough scoring equity to where you
Mhm.
want him to have the ball in your hands. Like I think there's some Halliburton to his game a little bit, but Halliburton's shot is what opens up so much of the rest of his game. And although I believe in Dyson's shot, I don't think it's clearly something that he feels as confident in as Halliburton does. And I don't think it's going to be the weapon. So, but what I do like, because he's a guy that, like you said, like he's not going to, I think he could beat the first guy. Like, even though he doesn't have like a quick first step, because he's strong and he's smart. And even though he's not shifty, like he does have like, his handle I thought was way better at the end of the year
Yes.
than it was at the beginning, where I wrote about him in the first, after the first game and for No Ceilings. And I wrote Dyson Daniels' handle is a bit worrisome. It's too loose. He dribbles too far out in front of his body on crossovers. NBA ball hawks like Patrick Beverly or Davion Mitchell won't let him get past half court if he doesn't tighten it up. So I think that that's something he really worked on and improved on mid-season, where I felt confident in his handle by the end of the year, and he is able to get 2 spots on the floor. And when he gets to certain spots, like in that little, 8 to 10 foot area, he's got that float game.
Yes.
And that float game is something serious, boy. Like,
Mhm.
and I love the dribble with your left, spin over your left shoulder and hit that little floater. It's so smooth. I mean, that is a legit go-to weapon for him.
Yes.
50% from that in-between floater area per instat. And it matches eye test. So,
Mhm.
I mean, that float game is a good counter for somebody who
Right.
isn't always going to be able to get to the rim.
Right. Right. Well, Corey, I do want to say this. So his floater is actually the first thing that I wrote in my notes. I wrote great touch on his floater. It's beautiful. It's really, really good. My only concern with that is that he, like Emmanuel quickly in his rookie season with the Knicks, he spams that floater like hell. And one of my concerns is that his mid-range game is almost non-existent. Watching his tape, it was really hard to find tape of him taking mid-range jump shots. It was really rare, where even from like 12, 15 feet out, he's like throwing up floaters, you know? And so I'm with you, dude. I love the touch on the floater. He throws them up. He's confident in it. It looks really good. My one area of like another area of growth for him as a shooter, though, is I'd like to see him take some more mid-range pull-up jump shots. Like you just really don't see him doing that at all. At least
According
in the
to
G League tape.
according to Instat, he took 11. So,
Right.
that's
So that
a
yeah,
half a
pretty accurate.
less than half
Mhm.
mid-range attempt a game. Because
Yeah.
like you said, he'd rather go to the floater. And I mean, 50% on the floaters is pretty good. That's a pretty good number. So
Right.
if he could get to that spot, even if he spams it in the NBA and he's shooting it at that percentage, I think that's okay. That's a
Yeah.
pretty high percentage shot for him.
Mhm.
I like the comparison there to Quickly and how he used it. And I think Quickly this year did a good job leveraging that floater to kind of keep teams off balance. And, you do the like Trae Young, is it a floater? Is it an alley-oop type
Mhm.
thing? So I think that if you pair Dyson with like an elite role guy like a Mitchell Robinson, like shout out Michael Foster. We just did a piece on him, but I don't think he's like that Daniel Gafford, Mitchell Robinson type role man, Clint
Right.
Capella that like is just going to finish everything around the hoop. And I think if you pair Dyson with there, he could play it with that, make the defender that's on his heels play that cat and mouse game a little bit between himself and the big. Now, 50% on those little floaters, and he doesn't force a ton of bad shots. He makes the right play more often than not, but 52% at the rim per Instat. And a guy with his size, I think that number needs to improve. Now, he's playing against pros, and he was 18 for a lot of the G League season. But ultimately, that's something that's going to need to, improve a little bit. There are some flashes. He had some nice flashes for sure. But at the end of the day, is Dyson Daniels going to be a big at the rim attempt guy? And does he need that to be successful in the NBA?
No, I'm with you there. Like I just don't think he. Yeah, I mean, he just loves his floater so much, you know? Like, I feel like he's gonna go to that a lot. But yeah, for sure, at the rim too, like, I don't remember him dunking the ball very much in half court sets. So that's something to think about as well. I don't know how the numbers I actually haven't been looking at those numbers like you have. Maybe I should have. But yeah, man, like I just feel like I don't know if he'll do a ton of that, but that's okay too, because once again, I'm thinking of him as a connector, a floor raiser type of guy. So yeah, I mean, but he's already pretty strong. So
He is. He's
I
got a
imagine
good build.
he's got a nice build. And I feel like he's only gonna get stronger. So maybe that also helps him and he like takes better angles to the rim and maybe he even develops a little bit more burst. Things can change. But yeah, as of now, I just don't see him doing a ton of that.
He had a nice follow-up dunk when I saw him in January. Effortless. Like, I think he's a little bit bouncier than you would expect. He had 12 dunk attempts this year. He finished 11. And the one that he missed, I forgot what game it was. Maybe against like the Canton Charge. He tried putting somebody on a poster, like cock it
Mm,
back. He missed the dunk, but it wasn't by that much. So like I think he's got some underrated bounce. And with that size and that frame, like you said, I think at the rim number has to be a little bit better than 52% in the half court. But against a pros rather than college kids. So I think that's something that can improve. His passing. What kind of passer is he, in your opinion? Because we've mentioned connectors.
Yeah.
We've talked about, is he going to be a primary? Let's for a second put him in a scenario where, like, he's playing off of a scoring guard. Like, is this a guy that you think could run an offense?
I think maybe 100% he can. I think he's a good passer. I wrote good passer, nothing crazy flashy, but can easily run pick and roll, pick and pop, and make almost every read out of that. I thought he did a pretty good job of manipulating defenses off of drives. I thought he made good reads off of that too. Something that I noticed is at the end of the season, he had really developed a nice connection with that guy Fambo Zhang.
Yep.
Yeah, they were running like some really nice stuff between the two of them. Some dribble handoff stuff, some pick and roll stuff, pick and pop stuff.
Pick and
That
pop,
kid Zhang
yeah.
can really
Smooth shooter.
shoot the ball. Yeah,
Lefty.
dude. And Zhang had a couple nice finishes at the rim too, off of Daniels's passes. So I think Dyson is going to be a guy who, as like a secondary option, is easily going to be able to run pick and roll, pick and pop, and actually do it at like a really high level. He threw some nice hook passes, did a good job of, like, he would go to the rim, he'd get blocked off and made the correct reads. He's passing into the corner, passing into the wing, just good stuff overall. So I like him as a passer a lot. I didn't see anything like crazy special, but very, very good. And I think that's plenty good enough for, I think, what his role might be on the next level.
Yeah, he doesn't have, like, fellow Australian Josh Giddey type
Right.
creativity, but he is capable of making some of the same reads, even if they're not as, like, flashy. Like, from the
Correct.
jump, like even the first game against Iowa, like, he made some really impressive, like, come off the screen, hit the weak side hit pass, like those advanced reads that you're looking for. So it is kind of something I think that comes a little bit natural to him. I think the height, and if he's at 6'8", I mean, obviously seeing over the defense helps. And you mentioned, like, I love his pick and roll setups. Like, I love how, he runs guys into screens. Obviously, if you don't have a defender draped all over you or chasing you off the screen as easily, it's easier to make some of those reads. But yeah, I think he's going to be a really good passer. And, like, I think that his frame leads to some pretty awesome versatility in how you can use him as a passer, either on ball or, like, maybe even as a screener eventually, where he's making plays out of, like, the short roll. Could be fun. The other thing, I like his hit aheads a lot. I like, the fact that he's big and rebounds, and he can just immediately start the break and get guys going in transition. So I'm a big fan of his passing. And I think, like, when you combine that with the fact that he defends, which we'll talk about in a bit, and
Right.
the optimism with his shot, that's why we have him so high. That's why he's been rising on board. So we're going to talk about his defense in a minute, but first, let's take a quick break. All right, your boys are back, and we're going to talk about Dyson Daniels' defense. Where do you rate him in this class as a perimeter defender?
At the top. I think he's right up there with anybody as a perimeter defender. I love it. We talked about his strength. He shows it on defense. Corey, you talked about his sneaky bounce. He shows that on defense. As a help side defender, he blocked the shit out of some shots. And it was really impressive. Like, for whatever he lacked in terms of showing off, like, highlight dunks, he made up for with some really highlight blocks. And it was really fun to watch. I thought overall on the ball, he's a menace. I thought his hands could be a little bit more active. That's just my own nitpick on the ball. I thought he could. I thought he would poke at the ball a little bit more, but it's cool. Like, maybe he's just, like, super into being a disciplined defender and just staying in front of his man, because he can really stay in front of his man, whether it's a quicker guard. So if he's going against a quicker guard who's got sick handle, sick first step, yeah, he's going to try his best to stay in front of him, but he does a great job of recovering, does a great job of using his length to recover. I think he has great instincts. I loved how he navigated screens and pick and roll. On the ball, like he uses size and strength. Last year when we talked about Davion and his chest strength and how he put his chest into guys, I don't think Dyson's at that level, but I thought Dyson was really good at using his strength to stay in front of his man and to kind of get guys off of that straight line to the basket and kind of,
Mhm.
pushing them off the angle that they're trying to get to. I thought he was great at that. Help defense, I think, like a lot of younger basketball players, I thought, as a help defender, I thought he made the right rotations, but sometimes he was a little bit later than I would have liked. But once again, as a rim protector on the help side, I was like, that's some beautiful stuff. That's the type of stuff that you really want to highlight, that you want to talk about, because he would come out of nowhere and just absolutely erase some shots at times. Now, was it the case every time? No, but he's also like what, 19? So he's got a,
Young.
a lot of, yeah, there's a lot of time for him to continue to develop that. But dude, on the ball, whether it was a quick shifty guard or a powerful guard or whatever, his versatility as a defender, both on ball and off ball, is what NBA teams are going to fall in love with, especially when we're talking about like the playoffs where the game slows down a little bit and you need guys who are switchable. You need guys who
Mhm.
can defend multiple positions. I mean, look at the Suns and all their wings, and why they love their wings so much is because they can guard little guys. They can guard up to like 4s and 5s sometimes, So I think Dyson Daniels, if he really is 6'8", and I'm starting to believe it because he is only 19 and he can grow another inch or two. Who freaking knows, right?
Yeah.
But the guy at 6'8" with that wingspan, with the strength and the footwork that he has, there's a lot to love with him as a defender.
Yeah. And the chase down blocks.
Sick.
Chase downs are sick. And it's not just even like straight line speed and like the bounce. It's like knowing how to guard two on the break is like
Right.
really impressive stuff. And but then sometimes it was the bounce, and it was like the impressive athleticism that he has with his frame. So that was, really fun. I mean, you hit on a lot of the defensive stuff. I mean, the kid is like, that's why his value is so high, because defensively he's going to be able to guard everywhere and he's going to be able to body up. Obviously, he's not guarding the big centers, but like a small ball 5, he's going to be able to switch on a small ball 5, and you can confidently say he's not going to get worked there. He's
Yes.
going to be able to, guard. Like, could he check a Patrick Williams? I think so, right? And like Patrick Williams is going to start at the 4, and then he's agile enough to stay with a lot of point guards. I don't necessarily want him guarding, quick
Correct.
bursty point guards full time, because I do think those were the kind of players that gave him trouble, staying in front of them. But it's the effort, it's the size that allows him to recover and get back when he does get beat, and it's the discipline to shade his guys to the right spots of the floor. But yeah, there's just so much to like, and he's an intelligent kid who is still growing into his body, like you said. Like, imagine he became 6'10",
Oh my God.
right? Like, imagine he wasn't done growing.
Terrifying.
If he really is 6'8" and he still had a little
Right.
bit more, that would be sick. But I could just see him in the playoffs. And that's one of
Yes.
the things that I'm focused on now. Like, can I see this guy in the playoffs? We talked about this a couple episodes ago with Kennedy Chandler. And like, it's hard to see Kennedy Chandler being like a big time playoff guy, right? Unless he turns into like the level of shot maker of like Fred VanVleet. Like, that's the kind of
Yeah.
shot making trajectory he needs to be on to be a guy in a playoff setting. But Dyson, like, he's a guy that could play all over the floor in a playoff setting.
Yeah.
Like I think, and we'll talk about the comps. I mean, maybe this will be a good segue into that. I think the Bulls really miss Lonzo in the playoffs, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're buying stock in Dyson Daniels, who may you have bought stock in previously, one of my guys was Lonzo Ball. One of the other guys I put, Derek White, who I think is somebody that if Marcus Smart is, actually hurt, is going to have to play a big role, I think, for Boston in the playoffs. We've seen him have some big playoff moments in San Antonio. Like he had that run a couple of years ago where he had like that 30-point game in the playoffs, I think against Denver. And he had like a good series, like that kind of came out of nowhere. But like his thing is like big, switchable defender, smart, makes the right decisions on offense and defense. And like those are the kind of guys that Dyson reminds me of. And those are playoff guys. Those are valuable. That's why Boston traded for him, because he's a connector that could help your offense move along the right way. And he's going to be able to play smart, help team defense.
100. I couldn't agree more, man. I couldn't agree more. My thing with Dyson is, as I mentioned before, I just see him as an easy floor raiser. You add this guy to your team, and automatically your team goes up a level, in my opinion. And it's not because he's some unbelievable on the ball creator. He's not a superstar. He's a guy who can do so many things well for you. So I'll give my comp now too, Corey. And this is a comp that like I'm literally most proud of this comp because I think it's the best one I've ever come up with. I see so many similarities between the two games. You talk about a guy who's 6'8", who can create out of the pick and roll for you, is developing as a shooter. He may never become an elite sniper, but I think he'll shoot the ball well enough. He's going to be great for you in transition. Defensively, he's going to be able to guard so many different positions. If you think back to the Bulls, and you think about Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen, and I'm not comparing him to Scottie Pippen, but there's another guy on that team. Yes, man. There was a big guard on that team that was really important for them and raised the level of that team. Correct. He later on went to the Lakers and played for and helped them win the 2000 NBA title. I think he's Ron Harper. And I really think this is like literally my best comp ever because I see so much of Ron Harper in his game when we talk about the playmaking and the defense and the developing shooting of a Dyson Daniels, and also like the big 6'8" physique. He's a bigger wing with a nice frame. He's going to be physical with people, but also there's a lot of finesse to his game. He's going to run pick and roll for you. He can run the offense for you in a pinch. If you're obviously teams aren't running the triangle anymore, but Harper is going to be a guy, or sorry, Harper. Wow. Dyson Daniels is going to be a guy who's he can calm down your offense. He can organize things. He can connect things, as we've talked about. He can run with your second unit and run your second unit in a pinch. There's so much to Dyson Daniels that reminds me of Ron Harper that there are other names that I wanted to write down too. And I was like, no, I literally wrote in my comps, Ron Harper, comma, done. That's it. He's Ron Harper. and I hope you clip this one because I'm telling you, the more people watch Daniels, you're going to be reminded of Harper. If you remember Harper from back in the 90s, 2000, maybe we're too old, but yeah.
The Last Dance brought Ron Harper back into the ether of the NBA world, So I really like that one, man. Ron Harper was a valuable guy, like, because this is a guy who could get a bucket early in his career, like before the injuries, like with the Clippers, like he was a 20-point scorer, so he can go and get a bucket, but like he turned into just like the ultimate role player ahead of his time too.
Yes.
Right. Ron Harper would be awesome in the modern NBA. And I like that one. You should be proud of that one. That was a good one. And when you look at the context, like I think Ron Harper is like the kind of guy that, you want Derek White to be, like that type of player, right? Like that's that modern big guard. And as we said, like this is kind of the inverse of the Kennedy Chandler episode. Like Dyson Daniels is a big ass guard, even at 6'6". Let's say he's not actually 6'8", and in the combine he measures at 6'6". He's still a big guard.
Yeah.
Right? Like even at 6'6". So you don't have to worry about him getting picked on in the playoffs. You don't have to worry about a team scheming to run every pick and roll to get Dyson Daniels switched on to whoever the ball handler is. Like you don't have to worry about that. Like the dude is a good defender with the size to switch up and down and not get mismatched against. So I think that, this dude can make a lot of teams really happy.
Big
so
time.
What NBA team does Daniels give the best ROI to?
Do you have any? I need a second to think about this. Actually,
Yeah, I have a few. And the first one, I think you'll like it. I think the Knicks. I think everybody says the Knicks need a point guard, and I agree. I don't know if their, future starting point guard is currently on the roster. Derrick Rose, I think, is a guy that if he was healthy the whole year, I think the Knicks would have been a little bit more competitive. I think they would have been in the play-in tournament. His injury hurt, but Derrick Rose, like, that's Derrick Rose at this point. Like, he might get hurt and miss a lot of time. He can't handle the load of a full season anymore. I don't think Quickly is going to be a starting point guard on a successful playoff team, like that's going deep
Agreed.
into the playoffs. I think he's a change of pace guard that can run the point in spurts, but is also going to get hot and look for his own offense. And Quickly's a guy that, even though he's got a good wingspan and he plays hard defensively, I think he made strides. He's not a guy that you can switch up and down a lineup, and I think you could scheme for him in the playoffs and pick on him a little bit eventually.
Yep.
So I think with the Knicks, like, if you're going to go point guard, go for a point guard that also fits the bill for big wing, which is something that the Knicks need, and the Knicks have a lot of like 1 to 1.5 position defenders.
Yes.
Or positional players. Like, they don't have these guys that are really versatile. I guess Cam Reddish kind of fits that bill a little bit, right? Maybe Quentin Grimes. I think RJ a little bit. But most of the guys on the team, like, they're one position guys that can't really slide up and down a lot. And Dyson would give them the opportunity to, like, he could play next to Quickly. He could play next to RJ. He could play next to Grimes. He could play next to Deuce. He could play next to whoever. And in a pinch, he could probably be your small ball 4 if he's, measures out to be 6'8". So I think he could fit all up and down the lineup. And I think at the Knicks spot, that would be really good value. I think he'd be interesting on the Cavs.
Okay.
I think Garland, who I love, super high on, dude had an unbelievable year this year. And I think I'd rather have a guy like Dyson Daniels playing next to him than Karis LeVert as a backcourt mate. I just trust I trust the defense. You could take some pressure and run Garland off ball and let him get open and use him in some like Steph Curry actions more than just having him do a lot of the creating out of high pick and rolls and stuff, which could be interesting because Dyson can run your offense as a secondary creator,
right,
and he's helping your defense. And then you add a defensive lineup with Jared Allen, Evan Mobley, Dyson Daniels, Isaac Okoro. Sick. That's sick.
That's pretty good.
So I love the Cavs. And then either via trade up or if for some reason he were to drop on draft night, I think next to Jalen Green in Houston, like that's the kind of point guard that like I want playing next to Jalen Green. I don't want Kevin Porter Jr. point guard playing next to Jalen. I want a guy who is positionally big, can run the offense a little bit, but doesn't need the ball enough that he's going to take it out of Jalen's hands a lot of the time. So I thought those were 3 interesting spots for Dyson.
Okay. I have a couple. I was thinking I'd like to see him play next to Dame Lillard. I think that's an interesting fit, right?
Yeah.
I think that would be a pretty cool one. I was even thinking like the Wizards, put him next to Bradley Beal. Could be interesting. If he dropped a little bit, like he would have to drop a lot actually, but if he ended up at like 16 or whatever to the Hawks, I think he'd be a really good guy to put next to Trae Young too. But yeah, I think overall, like I think the idea that we're getting to is like he's a jumbo wing who you want to be who you want as a secondary playmaker. So put him next to a primary small guy seems to make sense and balance things out. So I'm definitely there with you, man.
Yeah, and like the Trae one, that makes a lot of the same reasons you would want him next to a guy like Garland. But honestly, he's a guy that could go anywhere.
Yeah, right.
And that's one of the selling points. Like he fits all of the teams. So talking about selling points, it's time for America's favorite segment. And based on our recent demographics, a decent amount of Canada and Australia, also their favorite segment. We're talking about it's time for Albert to sell this pen for Dyson Daniels.
Here we go. With Dyson Daniels, it's as simple as this. If you are trying to build an NBA title winning contending team, you need guys who can play defense and play it well, but also are versatile about it. You want guys who can guard multiple positions. That's kind of the name of the game right now. If you look at the top contending NBA teams, they've got guys who can guard multiple positions, right? Dyson Daniels is going to be a guy who I think from day one is going to be able to guard multiple positions. He's a guy who's got a good handle, can run your pick and roll, no problem. Pick and pop, no problem. He's a connector. He's going to move the ball well. Offensively, he's developing as a shooter. If you watch his G League tape, you've seen him grow as a shooter throughout the season. As Corey mentioned, his handle improved throughout the season. There's so much to like about the trajectory of his offensive game. Now, is he a finished product on that side? Absolutely not. But because his defensive ceiling is so high, and also his defensive floor is already so high, that you can offer him the time to develop on that offense. And already the offense is not a nightmare. There are good bones there. So once again, if you're a team looking to build a contender and you want guys who can guard multiple positions and give you some juice offensively with the ball in his hands, then it would be crazy to me for you to pass on a guy like Dyson Daniels, because he's an immediate floor raiser of any team he goes on, but especially if you're a team that's dreaming about winning the title sometime soon.
You redeemed yourself from last week's debacle with Blake Wesley Albert.
It's good to be back. It's good to be back.
Look, we knew you had it in you. Shoot or shoot. You got to get the volume. Volume shooter is going to hit some. You're going to miss some.
Hell yeah.
Sometimes you go cold, but you got to keep shooting. Short memory. You know what I mean? This is a really fun episode. Because even though, one, like you said, we haven't really talked about Dyson much, he's just a guy that it's so clear that in a draft like this, that there are some question marks, even though I'm a little more confident in this draft than others seem to be.
Same.
Dyson seems like one of the surer hits in this draft, and I think that he's going to make a team really happy for taking him, even if it is a team where you find a Josh Giddey situation and a team swings on him at 6. I think, that team will still be happy with the return on investment that they get. So, Albert, tell the people where they could find you on the World Wide Web.
You can find me at Alberto Gim on Twitter is where you'll find me. I'm working on some stuff for No Ceilings right now. Going to try to pump out an article. Actually, by the time you are hearing this, my article might already be out or whatever. So yeah, before I go though, did want to give a special shout out to my boy Ray On. I'm actually wearing the sweater that he made from his collection. His brand is R Rose. Rose because his mom's name is Rose, but wanted to give a special shout out to Ray, and I promised him that I'd wear his sweater on a pod one day, and here I am wearing his sweater. So did want to give a little special shout out to Ray. Yeah, that's where you can find me. And this was a really fun one, dude.
Shout out to Ray. Double it. 2 episodes.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
You can find me at Corey Tulaba on Twitter. You can find my YouTube channel at the NBA Draft Dude. You can find No Ceilings TV on YouTube as well. We got episodes of On the Clock with myself and Rucker. A lot of, I think Rucker probably put up almost every prospect's highlight videos up on the channel. We got all of the podcast episodes up there, so you can watch or watch the podcasts of No Ceilings podcast. You can watch the Draftdaq podcast, full episodes on the No Ceilings YouTube channel. Subscribe to NoCeilingsNBA.com. It's free. It's draft season, so the coverage is just going to be on fire. We've hit just about every prospect. I think we hit every prospect in our top 80, and now we're going beyond. So, and we're going to start hitting the big boys now that we've covered everybody. So that's going to be really fun. And as always, subscribe to the Draftdaq podcast anywhere podcasts are available. Leave a rating and a review. Albert gave you the 5-star Sell Me This Pen. So I don't, you got no excuse not to give us a 5-star rating if you haven't yet on Apple or Spotify. And we will be back next week to cover yet another prospect from the 2022 NBA draft. And we got some fun episodes coming up as well that are not, little out of bounds from what you're normally used to. So it's going to be a fun draft season. I hope you come and enjoy the ride with us. We will be back next week. Until that time, we out. Peace.